Hi, I'm Andy, aka googleman, and today we're talking about setting up meetings in Google Meet.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane. It's googleman.
Hi guys, and welcome back to aka googleman. If you haven't done so already, or indeed if you're just new here, please remember to click on the subscribe button down below so you'll get told when my new videos go live on this channel. So here we are in the grips of UK lockdown 2.0 with virus cases increasing all over the country, which means we are inevitably seeing more and more students having to self-isolate, staff being asked to self-isolate, and this is all on top of the usual autumn-winter bugs that we get when it comes to staff and students as well. And therefore it is more important than ever that we become proficient in blended and distance learning. And obviously this is something that we started to look at way back in March when we first went into lockdown. But because of government guidance and things like that, it is now pivotal that we all have proficiency in making this work. Now, a few videos ago, I spoke to you about some of the basics of Google Classroom, which is a great starting point for getting this distance and blended learning set up, and I'll link that video for you in the description below and in a little card up above as well. And I'll also put some of my other videos to do with Google Classroom, particularly the 5 main features that I think you should look at. And there will be more videos on Google Classroom coming up as well, just because of how important it is. What I'm going to be talking to you about today is setting up and joining meetings using Google Meet. Okay, this is actually going to be the first of 2 parts, and I did a similar video for EWS back in the original lockdown, so this is kind of like a redo of that one. Because of that and because of how important it is, I know I said in my last video that I was going to go to 1 video a week. For this week, I am actually going to do 2 this week. We're going to have the setting up and creating today, and then on Thursday, the old second day, you will get the other part of this video, just because I feel it's so important that we know how this works, because actually Google Meet allows us not only to kind of like meet families and students and just check up on them face to face, it can actually help to engage them in classroom learning if you know how to set yourself up. So one of the things you'll see on Thursday is how I set up using Google Meet for some of the lessons that I'm currently doing, where I do actually have students that are isolating, but they want to be involved in the lesson, and how I'm able to actually do that fairly successfully, I think. So if this sounds like something that's going to be really helpful to you, let's just jump straight in. Okay, so let's start setting up some meetings and lessons using Google Meet. And the first method that I'm going to show you is actually through Google Calendar. Google Calendar kind of lends itself to this really, really well, particularly for staff meetings primarily, in my opinion, because you create events and meetings on there anyway. Even when we weren't doing them virtually, school meetings would appear on your school calendar, whether it's the Google Calendar like we're using here, if you're a school that has or does use Outlook or something like that, it's always there. But it's also really good to help set up with classes as well, and I'm going to show you that setup here. So let's just go through the process. I've shown you creating meetings and things and some of the key things in Google Calendar before, and I'll link that video for you in the description below as well. But I'm just going to click on a point here where I would perhaps create a lesson. As I've said before, always click on the more options when you get this pop-up, because it gives you far more detail to work with. I'm just going to call this video lesson. If I want it to be a repeating lesson, I know it's going to happen, at the same time every week for a few weeks, then I can set that as a recurring event. For these, I wouldn't, for reasons I will explain later on. You could set a notification for that meeting as well, whatever you want to do with it. Now, adding people to this meeting, this is where Calendar really helps and is quite clever. So over in the Add Guests section here, now obviously if you are just inviting a couple of individuals, you can type their names in, find their email addresses or whatever, and you can get those people send their invitation. When it comes to classes, and I think this is going to be very helpful if you want to use this method and you don't have any of your class in front of you, okay? Because you'd have to invite the entire group. And this is also applicable if you have mailing lists already. You can put the name of the class, or the class code that you've got in Google Classroom, or the name on the mailing list that you've created in Google Contacts, or a group in Google Groups, into the add guests, and it will find everyone for you. So I'm just going to type in example, and I've got some example classrooms here, and I'm going to click on example group 1. And what this now does is when I send my invitation, it will send it to everybody on that class list, okay, automatically. I don't have to find any more names. When I then go back in, I will see the individual names of the students that are in that class and see what they have RSVP. So I can see for definite if there are students that aren't going to be there. Really, really good and handy. I tend to do this in tandem with Classroom, which I'll talk about later. But it's a nice, quick, easy way to invite them. What it also does is as soon as you've put some guests in there, whether you've done individual names or entire groups, is it automatically generates a Google Meet link for you. Okay. Now, if you're going to be using a Google Meet link from Classroom, okay, which you might choose to do, based on what I say later, that's absolutely fine. You can just actually remove that from there, okay? And you can just remove that link from there so there's no kind of confusion over what is going on. From there, you click on save. It will ask you if you want to send an email invitation to all the people that you have invited. Of course, you would do that. You'd send that email. It puts that onto my calendar for me. And no matter the RSVP status, for your invitees, so whether they've RSVP'd or not, it will appear on their calendar, okay? So it means they do have that little nudge, and of course they will receive the invitation email, excuse me. So really, really nice, really handy, quick way to invite people. My personal opinion, however, is if you're inviting students, I would go for Google Classroom as a method to create these meetings. You could do this in tandem with Calendar, because you can send them a separate invitation, so you've got an RSVP list instead. And the reason I say that is primarily for kind of safeguarding reasons, because I think that doing it through Classroom means you are less likely to get students that you don't want in there. Okay, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I'm going to go on to Google Classroom in a minute. Also, from a safeguarding perspective, please, please, please remember to be as professional as possible with these video lessons. Okay. Think about the background that you've got going on in there. If you look at my background here, I've just got a curtain in my living room and one of my living room lights. There's nothing else there that kind of identifies the room that I am in. You know, be aware that even though it is not in a classroom, it should be treated as a classroom situation, particularly if you are teaching at home and not in school. If you're doing it as blended and you're in the classroom, then it will naturally happen anyway. But make sure that it's is a situation that is safe for you and the students. And whatever you do, if you are left in a situation where it's just you and one student, make sure you end that lesson immediately. It's certain guidance that we've been given that we have discussed. And I know there are other companies and schools that do the same thing. You must make sure that you are not alone with these students online, because you leave yourself open to all kinds of trouble. Okay. So really, really do make sure of those things. Okay, let's get going, because now we're going to set up a meeting using Google Classroom. Okay, so here we are in one of my example Google Classrooms. Now, as you can see in here, if you look around, there's currently not a Google Meet link generated for this, okay? And I'm going to look at that now. Now, this is my preferred method of setting up video lessons, okay, for reasons that I'll talk about shortly. I do often, if I'm doing this with an entire class or a large portion of the class, I will do this in tandem with the Google Calendar as well. So what I will do is I will send them a meeting invitation, like an event invitation through Google Calendar. So I've got an RSVP list, and then I will sort out the link for the meeting via this, okay? And I'll explain why I do it that way as we go through. So let's start by generating the link for the meeting. Now, you could just do this on your Classroom homepage, okay? So on the stream of whatever class you're doing this with, you've got a generate meet link. I tend to go through the settings, okay, and I'll show you why now. So if you go into the settings cog in the top right-hand side of your screen, scroll down to where you see Meet. Now, all you need to do here is generate Meet link, and it creates a link for it the same as it would for anything else. The main reason I come here is it reminds me always that just below here, I have visible to students. Okay, now that means that when the students are on their stream, the link is available for them to click on there and then. Now, students can't get into a meeting without a teacher being in that classroom. So if you're the one that set up the meeting, the students can't get in there while you are, until you are there. Okay. However, what it does give them the opportunity to do is copy and paste that link and send it on to other people. Okay. Less worrisome are actually those people outside of your school's domain, because actually the way that security is set up in G Suite for Education is anyone outside of your school's domain or your trust's domain, depending on whether you're in a multi-academy trust or not, means they can't access that without actually the teacher's permission. They almost enter a waiting room a little bit like you do in Zoom. However, you might get students going in there, perhaps with a mind to be a bit disruptive. It has happened once or twice, I think, in the past, where the students have been in the wrong lesson. I don't think they were disruptive, but there is that potential. Okay, so my personal opinion is I turn this off. Okay, and then I click on Save. This now means that I can see the link. It stays on my stream. Okay, you can see it there, and I can click on that link to take me to the appropriate lesson when I'm ready to do so, but the students can't see it there. What I then do with that to share that with students is I go back into settings. I scroll back down to where it says that, and I click on my little drop down and I click on copy. I then leave the settings behind. I'll go to classwork. And I've got two options here, okay? I can either set this as a material, so it's just there as a link, nothing else to it. Or if you don't want to go through the inviting students thing, okay, through calendar, you can actually set it as an assignment, because as we know, assignments actually appear on a student's Google Calendar as well as your own. Okay, so in this guy, I'll do that here. I'm going to create an assignment. I'll just call it video lesson to go in tandem with what I would have done on calendar. And I'm going to go to add down in the bottom here, and I go link. Because I have copied that link already, if I paste that in there and then add link, it's now the Google Meet link, okay, that I have set before. And this is really, really kind of handy. So material or assignment is up to you, because the students get an email about this anyway, and it depends on how far in advance you want to set it. But what you can then do is don't assign it straight away, but schedule that. Okay, and for me, I would schedule that to appear in the stream about 5 minutes before the start of the lesson, or possibly even less. Okay, so I'll go to schedule. Let's say it's going to be well, I set it on earlier on, the 10th, and I want it to be, I'd set my calendar for 9 o'clock. So let's set that for 8:55 and then click on schedule. Now that means that it's in, it will appear on that classroom stream. It'll go to the student's email box. It'll say, your teacher has set a new assignment for you, and it's just a link for it. Same thing applies if you were to create material. You can also do that in there as well. That's my option of choice. I create a material and set and schedule it to go out a few minutes before the lesson starts. This is key for me for one reason. One, it doesn't give them an opportunity to copy and paste that link to somewhere else, okay? Not unless they're really, really quick. The other key thing is it's very easy for us as teachers to then defunk that old meeting. Because if you've got a week between lessons, or even a day between your lessons, depending on what faculty you're in, that link would become perpetual, okay? It would become a recurring meeting. And if you do have students that are perhaps trouble-minded, they would send that on to people you wouldn't necessarily want in the room. You know, a lot of schools take a lot of time making sure that people are not together that shouldn't be. Okay, so what I do following a lesson, in fact, I did this earlier on today, is I go back into my settings and back down to my Meet link. And in that same drop down where I copied it before, I now click on reset. It now generates a brand new Google Meet link for me with a new code in there. The old one has now been completely defunct and is not accessible to staff or students, okay? And I will then copy that and create a new material for that following lesson, okay? And for me, this, from my opinion, just adds that extra layer of security to that lesson. So it's peace of mind for me as a teacher going into those, particularly if I am doing a lesson where it's happening while I happen to be at home. Okay, it allows me to control the people that kind of see that. Okay, so that's it. Creating lessons in Google Classroom using Google Meet. Right, now let's go on to Gmail because we have a method there too. Okay, so here we are in my Gmail with my multiple inboxes set up on the right there. If you want to know how to do that, please check out the video that I will link above and below to you on the settings in Gmail. Now, creating a meeting using Gmail is really quick and really, really easy. And personally, I think it's one that is more applicable for use with staff-to-staff meetings, but it's completely up to you. To create one, you come over to the left-hand side here and you've got a little bit of your menu just entitled Meet, and you click on New Meeting. What that then does is it generates a meeting link for you, okay, and then you can do several things with that. If you click on here, you can simply just copy that to your clipboard. So if you've got one perhaps set up in Calendar you wanted to put a link into, you can do that, or you could paste that into an email that you perhaps already have drafted. What is probably the quickest thing for you to do is to click on Send Invitation. And again, you can copy the complete invitation, or even quicker, share via email. Now, what this will do is it takes you to a brand new tab, which it's just a tab with a new email open for you, and it's got all of the meeting information there for you, okay? So it will have a direct link. If you're having people dial in using Google Meet, that will be in there as well. And it will just have the meeting code on there also. And this is nice and really, really quick. You can send that to anyone that you want to have into that meeting. And what you can even do with that actually is, personally, what I would do with this is email it to myself as well. So as long as I have some kind of calendar notification that it's there, because it might be that this is a meeting that is on the calendar already, but it's got to go virtual instead of being face to face, as like we say, is often the case right now. So this is a nice, easy way to not clutter up your calendar by having like doubled up events, but to give you that code for it. So I'm just going to send this to the real world me, and I'd normally put a bit more information in there. I hope you can attend this meeting. Here is the meet code, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And then just send that or schedule it if that's what you're going to do with that. And that is it. It is measure sent. I can do all the normal things. And that's it. That's creating a meeting in Gmail. Okay, so we have generated our meeting links, and we have clicked our links and gone into the meeting, and your students have arrived. And as you can see here, I am in a mock meeting with a test student account. I will emphasize it is just a test account. It is just me using another device. I'll remind you that if you end up in a situation where you're in a video lesson with an individual student, you should immediately but politely end that lesson for your own safety and the safety of that student as well. Okay, it's just a common sense approach. But once you are in there and everything is fine, you want to be able to set the screen up to make it as best for you as possible. Okay, and the students will be able to do this at their end as well. In order to do that, you want to maximize the number of people you can see. Down in the bottom right hand corner here, we have this little 3 dots menu. If you click on there, and then you can click on change layout. You've got a couple of options here. You've got auto, which will kind of like set it to whatever it thinks is best. You can set a spotlight if you want a particular person on there. You could just have a sidebar. So if you might have a focal person in the middle and then everyone else down the side. Or my personal preference is to go for tiled. Down at the bottom of that, it tells you the maximum number of tiles that it would display. And this is kind of based on the size of the screen. So if you're just using like a phone screen, this will be quite small. If you're using a large monitor with your aspect ratio set correctly, you could get lots of people. But, you can adjust that for however many there needs to be, and it will show everyone a little bit like Zoom did originally. It kind of automatically does that. This allows you to set it as you want it to be. Okay, really good. What you're also able to do once you've set that, so I'm getting little notifications. I've turned my microphone off just to make this a little bit easier. When it comes to people in the meeting, you can also mute those people. You are also able to remove them. So if I come to my my list here, I can see who is in the meeting with me. I then have a menu here. Now I can't unmute that person. If they are muted, they have to unmute themselves. Okay, I could pin that person. So that this is really handy. You could tell your students to pin you. And then you will be kind of the automatic spotlight, or if you're presenting your screen, something we'll talk about next time, that will do it. But also from here, you can remove that person from the meeting. So if they are being disruptive in some way, you can actually remove that student or any number of students from that if they are causing any kind of issues. Okay. What some of you may have also spotted, so if I come back out into the main meeting here, is there is an option to record the meeting. You can do this if there are people missing and you wanted to be able to send the lesson to them afterwards. This is an option. I have done it in the past. A bit of reassurance for people, because I have been asked this in the past as well. Students can click and record to the meeting. Okay, this is something they're able to do. Okay, however, if they do that, they don't have access to the recording. As the person that sets the meeting up, you as the teacher will get that recording sent directly to your Google Drive. Okay, and students won't have access to that in any way unless you specifically share it with them, either as an email attachment or a drive share or something like that. So please don't worry about that. And the last thing I would say from a setup point of view is if you're in a system where you've got lots of people and you might experience some kind of lag there, I know it does happen, it's happened in meetings and training that I've done on this, just tell everyone to turn on captions. Okay, so then even with the lag, it will pick up what you are saying and display it across the bottom of the screen. So it means that no one's kind of like left out of that. Obviously, as you can see, it has adjusted the layout of my screen slightly to allow for those captions to appear. Okay, so there it is. That's setting up and getting into your video lessons in Google Meet, and I really hope that's been useful for you. In Thursday's video, I'll be going over, like I said, the setup for the actual classroom when I'm doing blended learning, where I have students in the room and students in a video meeting. I will show you how to share information on there, much like you can do with Zoom, and share your screen. I will talk about how to take questions on there and the different ways you can do that using Google Meet to make this as effective a way of teaching as possible, or not just teaching, actually just communicating with your students, which if they're at home will be vitally important, particularly for the mental health of those students that we teach. Until Thursday, stay safe, stay well, googleman out.